Well, we're back with the Nakamichi LX-3 again. No sooner did I make my previous video than did this thing start having issues again. Specifically, the motor that I put in from the donor deck has started squeaking at random times. Now, presumably, or I'm assuming that this has to do with inadequate lubrication inside it. I mean, it's an old motor. I mean, that motor I think is even older than this deck. So, it should be a simple matter of just oiling that. And in fact, I figure maybe I'll take the opportunity to show you all how that motor comes apart and what's inside it, because I didn't get a chance to do that when I was explaining how I swapped its direction last time. And other things related to this deck, a few other things I forgot to mention. The other thing that this had wrong with it before was that one of the two pinch rollers, because it is a dual capstan unit, so it has two pinch rollers, one of the two was taking an excessively long time to come up into position when you hit the play button. It turned out this was gummed up grease, so I just had to pull that pinch roller off and re-lubricate its arm and then put it back on, and then realign the tape guide that was built onto it, which was an absolute pain. So yeah, the other thing I did was I cleaned up the pinch rollers with, let's see if I can find it here, this stuff, the cleaner whose name I can't pronounce. I'm not sure if I've shown that in a video before, but at some point I want to do a demonstration of that. But what it's essentially this all-purpose, environmentally safe, non-toxic, whatchamacallit, all that kind of stuff, cleaner. But interestingly enough, despite having no harsh chemicals or anything in it, it cleans things quite well. It's great for getting melted neoprene belt stains off my workbench here, or work shelf, I guess it really is. It also seems to restore rubber rollers, at least to some extent. So I've done that to the last couple cassette decks I've gotten. I've just taken the pinch rollers out and just rolled them in that stuff to get all the crap off of it. And so far it's worked pretty well. In fact, I actually discovered it could do that when I was back up at school, and I managed to revive an old printer that I found by cleaning all of its rollers with that stuff. So, at some point I'll do a video on cleaning rollers with that stuff. I should probably demonstrate that, because it's quite amazing what it can do. But either way, back to what I was talking about a second ago. What we're going to have to do is take that apart. And actually, before I do that, let me plug this thing in. There we go. Power it on, see if I can show you what's going on here. Wait for stop to stop flashing. So it won't let you do anything until then. Oh, actually, it's not going to do it now. Never mind. I already removed the belt from the thing. So, for whatever reason, it only seems to do it when there's stress on the motor. But when I pull the motor out, it does it when I spin the pulley. So, who knows? So let me unplug this again, because actually this is another thing I forgot to mention, something to watch out for when you're working on these decks. These solder joints right here, that I'm conveniently not touching but just pointing at, have 120 volts AC going into them. Do not touch those. Be careful that you don't touch those while you're undoing the screws on the mechanism, because that will zap you. I found that out the hard way. Yeah. So you'll probably want to unplug the deck whenever you're going in there unscrewing things. Or if you really don't want to do that, just watch where you're putting your hands. But I am not responsible if you hurt yourself because you did not take my advice. So, without further ado, let's take this motor out of here. Now, as I said, I already took the belt off, so that's why it didn't squeak. For whatever reason, I'm hoping it's not something in the mechanism that's doing that, and that it is indeed the motor. I think it's the motor. Sounds like it's coming from the motor. So we'll go ahead and take out this little tiny screw here. This motor is actually really easy to take apart. The old one that was in here, the old Mabuchi motor that came with it, not so much. So, I guess the cheapo Sharp deck actually had something going for it in that regard. So, catch the little tiny screw, because that, if my camera would focus on it, that is one little tiny screw. I've already almost lost it at least once. So now with that off, this little back panel kind of tilts out. This little tab on there that slots into a slot on the side. It's kind of obscured. It's got this little dust cover thingy in there. Then on the back here you got another this black dust cover covering a circuit board. And because the belt's off, this thing just slides right out. And as you can see, as I think I mentioned in my last video, there is actually a whole separate motor within a motor, kind of. And then it has this circuit board soldered onto it that does speed control and all that fun stuff. So reversing the speed was actually quite simple. All I had to do was desolder this underlying motor from this board and solder it back on in the opposite direction. So that was relatively simple. But now what I gotta do is we gotta get some oil inside here. And I think the way you're supposed to do that is via these couple holes on the front, and there may be some more underneath here. So I might have to desolder this again, but I figured this is probably going to be difficult to do one-handed, so I'm going to go ahead and shut this off for a second and come back in a moment with it all fixed up. Well, got some oil in there now. I've managed to kind of cram it into these couple holes here. I also pulled the pulley off, since that's also accomplished with just loosening a screw. And kind of got some oil just kind of around the shaft of the motor there, and just kind of eventually kind of coaxed it into soaking through there into the motor. And I think that's what really helped the most, because now feeling this, it's not, I don't think it's perfect, but it is definitely a lot better than it was. I haven't seen, I don't hear it squeaking at all, so I'm hoping that I won't have to take this whole circuit board off again and then try and cram it into the back of the motor somehow also. So I guess we'll keep it this way for now. If, I mean, worst comes to worst, if it starts squeaking again, it's simple enough to get this motor apart. So, oh, one other thing I think I forgot to mention is some of you might have noticed in the last video that I did not take the original pulley off the original motor and put it on the new one. And there was actually a reason for that, and it's really simple. I tried with various tools and various, amounts of violence with this. And you can probably see there are marks on this pulley from it. I could not get this pulley off from this. It is just so far stuck on here. It just will not come off. So I'm not sure. I mean, maybe if I cram some oil in there or something like that, maybe it would come off. But so far, it seems to be operating okay with this one. And this one has that little screw on it that keeps it on, so it makes it really easy to take off. So for right now, I'm going to keep that one there. If I notice any issues in the sound, if it's excessive wow and flutter or anything like that, I might try again to put the original one on there. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and leave it, just because it seems to be working fine, at least to my ears. If one of you in the viewing audience happens to know otherwise, that it really does make that big a difference, feel free to let me know in the comments, and I will try once again to get this pulley off. But for now, go ahead and reassemble this thing, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so the motor's back together now, and I put the belt back in, which is a bit of a pain in this unit, because the belt actually has to go across two different flywheels. It's an interesting design. Normally in dual capstan decks, like for instance my Iowa AD-F810 over there underneath my computer monitor, which I think I need to do a video about that one too. That's another recent Goodwill purchase. Most decks, including that Iowa deck, actually have one belt connecting the motor to one flywheel and then another belt that connects the two flywheels together. Whereas this one just has one that connects everything, and it makes it a bit of a pain to get it on there, but not too bad. So in the meantime, let's go ahead and plug this thing back in. And power it up. And when the thing initializes, leave it running for a while, see if it squeaks. Thing seems to be running quite nicely. Of course, we all know if it's going to squeak, it's not going to do it on camera. We'll let it run for a little while longer to see if it does anything. So one nice thing about this deck is that it does let you actually run it without a tape in it. You just have to, the only thing is that it won't run if the cassette door is open. But other than that, it'll run no matter what tape or lack thereof is in there. It can be handy because if you remove this front door panel and you put it into play mode, then you can clean the cap stands and things like that. Or at least clean cap stands the lazy way by putting it into play mode and then taking a Q-tip with your cleaner of choice, usually, you know, rubbing alcohol or something like that. Just touch it to the cap stand and just hold it there while the cap stand spins underneath it. And it looks like we're doing pretty well so far, so I'm going to say that is a successful fix. So, thank you for watching, and hopefully this deck will go into service now and not stay here on the repair bench with other issues.